You wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, you're already on your phone. Maybe you told yourself it would be just a quick check. Just the news, just a few messages, just a minute. But 20 minutes later, you're watching a video about something you don't even care about, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a small voice is whispering, "You did it again." And the worst part isn't the lost time. The worst part is that you already knew it was going to happen. You've been through this before. You've made the promises, you've deleted the apps, you've set the screen time limits, and somehow, every single morning, the phone wins. So what is actually going on? Is this a willpower problem, a discipline problem? Are some people just built differently and you got the short end of the stick? Here is what James Clear would tell you. None of that is true. The problem isn't you. The problem is your system. Pause Clear is the author of Atomic Habits, one of the most widely read books on human behavior of the past decade. He spent years studying the science of habits, and what he found completely reframes the way we think about change. The big idea of the book can be said in one sentence: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. That's it. That's the whole book. But understanding what that actually means, and more importantly, what to do about it, that's where things get genuinely interesting. And there is one idea in this book, something Clear calls identity-based habits, that once you hear it, will change how you look at every small choice you make from that point forward. If ideas like these help you think differently, subscribe. This is exactly what we explore here every week. Think about a commercial airplane leaving Los Angeles, headed to New York. If the pilot adjusts the nose just 1 single degree to the south, right after takeoff, nobody on board notices anything. The flight feels completely normal, but by the time that plane crosses the country, it doesn't land in New York. It lands somewhere in South Carolina. 1 degree. That's all it takes to end up in a completely different place. That's exactly what James Clear is talking about when he says your habits are the 1-degree adjustments that determine where your life lands. Most people spend their time obsessing over the destination, setting big goals, dreaming about the results, making long lists of everything they want to accomplish. And Clear doesn't say goals are bad. He says goals are almost irrelevant if your daily systems are broken. Because here's the thing, every person who picks up their phone 100 times a day has reasons. Every person who can't stick to an exercise routine has reasons. The question isn't whether you have goals. The question is whether your environment, your routines, and your identity are actually built to support those goals. And most of the time, they're not. So let's talk about what actually drives human behavior, starting with the insight that surprised more readers than almost anything else in this book. The first insight is this: you don't build habits, you build identity. Most people think about change the wrong way. They start from the outside and work inward. They say, I want to read more books, or I want to go to the gym, and they focus entirely on the outcome. Clear calls this outcome-based thinking, and it works for a while, until motivation runs dry, until life gets busy, until one bad day turns into one bad week, and the whole thing falls apart. What actually creates lasting change, according to Clear, is flipping the direction entirely. Instead of starting with what you want, start with who you want to become. Instead of saying, I want to stop wasting time on my phone, you say, I am someone who is intentional with my attention. That single shift changes everything, because every action you take from that point forward either confirms or contradicts the identity you're building. When you put the phone down and open a book, you're casting a vote for the person you want to be. And the person who casts enough of those votes, day after day, becomes that person. Not because they had more discipline, because they had a clearer sense of who they were becoming. Now, identity is powerful. But identity without the right environment around it is just. And that brings us to the second insight, one that is going to feel almost too simple, until you actually try it. Your environment is stronger than your willpower, every single time. Clear spends a lot of time in this book talking about how the design of your physical space shapes your behavior far more than motivation ever could. Here's a real example from the book. Researchers at a hospital in Boston wanted to encourage staff to drink more water and fewer sugary drinks. They didn't run a campaign. They didn't send emails about healthy choices. They simply moved the water bottles to eye level in every refrigerator and put the sodas on the bottom shelf. Water consumption went up significantly without anyone making a single conscious decision to be healthier. That's how powerful your environment is. It's making decisions for you before you even realize there's a decision to make. So if your phone is the first thing you see when you wake up, your environment is choosing for you. But if you charge your phone in another room and put a book on your nightstand instead, your environment starts choosing differently. You haven't changed your willpower. You haven't motivated yourself. You've just redesigned the space, so the better choice becomes the easier choice. And speaking of easy choices, there's a third insight that people either love or dismiss the first time they hear it. But it might be the most practically useful idea in the entire book. It's called the 2-minute rule. The idea is this: when you're trying to build a new habit, scale it down until it takes 2 minutes or less to do. Want to start meditating? Don't commit to 30 minutes. Commit to taking 3 deep breaths before you open your phone in the morning. Want to start exercising? Don't sign up for a 6-day training plan. Commit to putting on your workout clothes. That's it. Just the clothes. Now, a lot of people hear this and think it sounds ridiculous. What's the point of 3 breaths? What's the point of putting on clothes if you're not going to exercise? But Clear's argument is sharp and completely backed by research. The point isn't the 2 minutes. The point is showing up. Because the biggest battle in building any habit isn't sustaining it. It's starting it. It's getting past the resistance, the friction, the moment where your brain says, I don't feel like it today. The 2-minute version of any habit removes that resistance almost entirely. And once you're in motion, you're far more likely to keep going. The person who puts on their workout clothes almost always ends up working out. The person who opens the book almost always reads a few pages. Motion creates momentum, and momentum is what turns a tiny habit into a real one. So far, we've talked about identity, environment, and the power of starting small. And if you've been listening closely, you've probably already spotted a pattern. Every single insight in this book is pointing at the same uncomfortable truth, which is that the systems running your life were mostly built by accident. Not by you, not for you, just by repetition and circumstance. And now we're going to talk about why that matters so much, starting with the reason your phone is so much harder to put down than any habit you've ever tried to build. The fourth insight is about what Clear calls the cardinal rule of behavior change. And it goes like this: behaviors that are immediately rewarded get repeated, and behaviors that are immediately punished get avoided. That sounds obvious until you really sit with it. Think about what happens when you open a social media app. Within seconds, something makes you smile, something surprises you, something gives you a tiny hit of novelty or validation or outrage. Your brain registers that reward instantly, and it files away the instruction, do this again. Now think about what happens when you try to meditate, or go for a run, or work on something that actually matters to your future. The reward for those things doesn't come in seconds. It comes in days, in weeks, in months. Your brain, which evolved over thousands of years to prioritize immediate survival over long-term planning, has a very hard time choosing the delayed reward over the instant one. This is not weakness. This is biology. And James Clear's answer to this isn't to fight your biology. It's to work with it. He calls it adding immediate rewards to habits with delayed payoffs. Something as simple as putting $1 in a jar every time you work out, or allowing yourself a specific playlist only during exercise, or tracking a habit on a calendar and feeling the satisfaction of marking another day done. You're not tricking yourself. You're building a bridge between the action and the reward, so your brain starts associating the right behaviors with something that feels good right now. And that idea of tracking brings us naturally to the fifth insight, one that sounds almost too practical to be life-changing until you actually try it for 30 days. Clear is a strong believer in what he calls habit tracking, and the research behind it is surprisingly powerful. When you track a habit visually, whether it's a simple calendar on your wall, a journal, an app, or even just a row of paper clips moving from one jar to another, something important happens. The act of tracking becomes a habit in itself. And more than that, it creates a visual record of your identity. Every mark you make is proof that you showed up. Every streak you build becomes something you genuinely don't want to break. Clear tells the story of comedian Jerry Seinfeld, who used to hang a large yearly calendar on his wall and put a red X over every single day that he wrote new material. After a few days, a chain started to form. And the rule Seinfeld gave himself was simple: don't break the chain. He wasn't focused on writing brilliant jokes every day. He was focused on not breaking the chain. That shift in focus from outcome to consistency is exactly what habit tracking does for ordinary people trying to build ordinary habits. It removes the question, "Was today good enough?" and replaces it with the much simpler question, "Did I show up?" And showing up day after day is what actually builds a life. Now, here's the part where a lot of people push back, and honestly, it's the most common concern that shows up in reviews and reader discussions about this book. So, it deserves a real answer. The question goes something like this. This all sounds great, but what about the days when everything falls apart? What about when you're sick or exhausted, or you just completely blew it and missed a week? Does the whole system collapse? Clear's answer to that is the sixth insight, and it might be the most honest and human thing in the entire book. He says, never miss twice. That's the rule. Not never miss, not be perfect, just never miss twice. Because here's what the research actually shows. Missing a habit once has almost no measurable impact on your long-term progress. What derails people isn't the missed day. It's the story they tell themselves after the missed day. It's the "I already ruined it, so what's the point" spiral that turns one bad day into one bad week, into the complete abandonment of something that was actually working. Clear calls this getting back on track, the most underrated skill in habit formation. The person who works out 4 days a week for a year will always outperform the person who tries to work out 7 days a week and quits after the first missed session. Imperfect consistency is not a consolation prize. It is the strategy. It is what actually works in the real world, with real jobs, real families, real hard days, and real human limitations. And all of this, every insight we've covered, the identity shift, the environment design, the 2-minute entry point, the immediate rewards, the tracking, the grace to keep going after a bad day. All of it has been building toward one final idea, the one that ties everything together, the one that, when you really hear it, changes not just how you think about habits, but how you think about yourself. Remember that moment at the very beginning, when you woke up and reached for your phone before your feet even touched the floor? We said the problem wasn't willpower. We said the problem was your system. But now, after everything we've covered, it's time to go one level deeper, because the real answer is even more specific than that. The reason your phone wins every morning isn't because you're weak. It's because someone else built that system. Thousands of engineers, designers, and behavioral scientists spent years and billions of dollars building an environment perfectly optimized to capture your attention the moment you open your eyes. The notifications, the infinite scroll, the unpredictable rewards, the little red dots that trigger curiosity, all of it was designed with extraordinary precision to make sure that checking your phone feels easier, more natural, and more immediately satisfying than almost anything else you could do in that moment. You were never in a fair fight. You were playing on a field that someone else designed, with rules that someone else wrote, for goals that benefit someone else entirely. And here is what James Clear would say about that. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. But now you understand what that sentence actually means. It means that if your mornings feel out of control, it's not because you lack ambition. It's because the system surrounding that moment was built by someone else, and you never replaced it with one of your own. The goal was never to have more discipline. The goal was always to build a better system. One that makes the right choice feel as natural and effortless as reaching for your phone used to feel. One that's designed by you for the life you actually want to live. And that is the climax of this. Not a dramatic revelation, not a magic formula, just a quiet, powerful shift in responsibility. You stop waiting to feel motivated. You stop blaming yourself for failing at goals built on top of broken systems. And you start asking a completely different question. Not, why can't I just do better? But what kind of system would make doing better feel almost automatic? That question, honestly asked and honestly answered, is where real change begins. Before this book, you probably thought the people who seem effortlessly disciplined were just wired differently, that they had something you didn't, some extra reserve of motivation or self-control that you were never given. After this book, you know that's not true. The people who build great habits aren't fighting themselves every day. They've simply built environments, identities, and systems that make their desired behavior the path of least resistance. They're not stronger. They're smarter about design. And here's what no summary, including this one, can fully give you. The full experience of reading Atomic Habits is filled with stories, research, and step-by-step frameworks that go far beyond what we covered today. Clear walks you through exactly how to audit your current habits, how to design your environment room by room, how to use what he calls habit stacking to link new behaviors to ones you already do automatically, and how to build what he calls a system of systems that compounds over time the way interest compounds in a savings account. These are the details that turn understanding into action and action into identity. If this resonated with you, the link to grab your own copy is in the comments below. Some books are worth reading slowly with a pen in hand. This is one of them. So here's the final thought, the one worth carrying with you after this video ends. You are not the sum of your intentions. You are not defined by what you want to become or by the goals you write down on New Year's Eve. You are, right now, today, the sum of what you repeatedly do. And what you repeatedly do is shaped, more than anything else, by the systems around you. Change the system, and over time, almost without noticing, you change the person. One small habit, one degree of adjustment, one vote cast for the identity you want to build. That's all it takes to start landing somewhere completely different.